All right, good morning, everyone. Happy Pi Day. As promised, we'll go ahead and get started here at the top of the hour. It looks like we've got about 47 folks that have taken a little bit of time this morning to join us. So I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy days to join us. The divisional water assistant director has had, unfortunately, some travel issues this morning. So I see John's with us, but he may not be in a place where he can necessarily join me on camera just yet. So we'll go with that. But again, I appreciate everyone this morning. And you'll see that we also have the agenda on screen, but we're going to play with the agenda just a little bit because hopefully everyone will get their money's worth in the conversation that we planned this morning. Because as we speak, EPA is announcing proposed regulations for national primary drinking water regulations for PFAS in drinking water. So what we've done is we have prepared some information that we're going to share with everyone up front on PFAS and what we know as far as the proposed drinking water regulation is concerned. And then I'm going to pause and let folks ask questions, and raise any concerns, however that goes. We're also going to keep an eye out for Commissioner Hatton. He's been pulled in a couple of different directions this morning. So we're going to keep an eye out. If Tony's able to join us, we'll talk about the PFAS sludge sampling that he had intended to speak of, but we're going to work with his schedule just a little bit. So again, I thank everyone for joining us. Looks like we're up to 58 folks, but without any further ado, we are past the 10 o'clock hour. So I'm going to go ahead and share a slide deck and we'll make it available for folks. But this is going to have the information that has basically been announced by EPA this morning for the drinking water rule for PFAS. So I have to figure out how to share my screen. One quick second. And I think, Kim, I have the ability to do that. And if someone can just give me a heads up on whether you can see what I've got on screen right now. Yes, it looks like we're good to go. So looks like somehow Zoom is messing with me, but if you guys can see what's going on, we should be good to go. Again, welcome everyone. This is the Drinking Water, Clean Water Advisory Work Group. My name's Kerry Johnson. I'm director of the Division of Water, and we have several folks from the division on the call. But that's one of the good things about a virtual setting is you can see who's here. So I'm going to go ahead and go through a slide deck, as I mentioned, and go ahead and mention that just this morning, EPA is proposing a national primary drinking water regulation for 6 PFAS in drinking water. Oh, it appears I am not sharing screen. I'm sorry. Let me try again.
Carrie, you are sharing the screen. If you all can't see it, go to the top under view options and drop down and choose to go to Carrie's screen and not the EEC IT screen.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, so I've got a green box around the screen that should have my name on it and Team Kentucky logo. So if we're good, I'll go ahead and keep on. All right, hearing me not to stop. As I mentioned, EPA is proposing national primary drinking water regulations for 6 PFAS chemicals in drinking water this morning, PFOA and PFOS as individual contaminants, and 4 additional PFAS chemicals as a mixture. Those chemicals are PFHXS, PFNA, PFBS, and HFDODA, which also is known as the Gen X chemicals. The proposed final rule, as I mentioned, this is the draft rule being proposed today. According to EPA, the proposed final rule is anticipated in late 23 or early 2024. Our guess would be early 2024, about a year from now. And basically one of the things the rule does do is it requires water systems to monitor and notify, basically similar to tier 2 notifications, which are notifications within 30 days for the public notification rule. Additionally, EPA is proposing non-enforceable MCLGs, or the maximum contaminant level goals, for these 6 PFAS chemicals. And basically those are the goals for where there are no known or anticipated negative healths that allow for margin of safety within drinking water. So these are the proposed levels. Again, these were shared with by EPA's co-regulators. The Division of Water works very closely with EPA in implementing the Safe Drinking Water Act. These are the proposed goals. Again, PFOA, PFOS. The goal, maximum contaminant level goal, is 0 parts per trillion, or 90 grams per liter. And the enforceable level of the proposed MCL is 4 parts per trillion, which is basically the detection limit for these chemicals. The other 4, as I said, are proposed to be included as a mixture. So it's basically a unitless standard that includes a hazard index. So we've got some really intelligent folks that are working on what the equations that those hazard indices look like. And EPA has also assured stakeholders that there will be an online tool in order to determine hazard indices based on the sampling of these compounds. So, as I mentioned, basically the hazard index, it's a tool that is used to evaluate potential health risks from again, these 4 mixtures. As we know, or at least as the science indicates, PFAS chemicals tend to occur, a lot of them, in similar places. So that's one of the reasons that EPA, at least in their messaging with us, mentioned the regulation by mixture of those 4 chemicals, and then the known compounds of PFOA, PFOS. So again, just kind of quickly going through the requirements for those public watering systems. Basically, the rule identifies 3 requirements. Number 1, monitoring. So that's quarterly monitoring for surface and large groundwater systems, biannual, twice a year for other systems. And as you know, is allowable within the Safe Drinking Water Act, the reduced monitoring is also a possibility. So our Safe Drinking Water Act folks, in implementing and working through compliance, they assess monitoring and the timelines for monitoring on a regular basis. And we anticipate doing the PFAS chemicals in a very similar way. Number 2 requirement is public notification. If there's an exceedance, then basically, as I mentioned, the requirement would be similar to a tier 2 notification, which is notification to utility users within 30 days of the violation. And then the final thing is treatment, which is reducing the levels of the PFAS in the drinking water. According to the proposed standards, as I mentioned, this is the draft rule being announced today. About a year from now would be when we would anticipate the rule going final. And again, that's dependent upon public comment period and many steps along the way. One of the things that we want to share early and often is comments are being accepted. The action isn't final, and there aren't any regulatory requirements until the regulations do go final. But we did want to share the appropriate docket number and the website on where comments can be submitted. And again, we'll share these slides out so folks have availability of this information, but I would advise, or at least have everyone take a look at these regulations, because they're fairly wide-ranging and profound, and it's going to be not only an interesting year to hear stakeholder engagement, not only with the regulated community and public drinking water systems, but also the public and EPA. So we anticipate having several more of these types of meetings over the next year, but are very much willing to call stakeholder work groups to discuss concerns, path forward, and the like. Again, as a regulator with EPA and these compounds, one of the things we want to focus on is the public outreach and communication aspect. And that's why we're basically sharing the information with you guys at the same time as EPA is. It was it was a lucky coincidence, so to speak, but it worked out, I think. Just real quickly, wanted to mention a couple things as far as the path forward are concerned. As far as lab methodologies, the 2 drinking water methodologies are identified in the rule as being available to use. That's method 533 and 537.1. The primacy agency, which is the division of water within the Energy Environment Cabinet, we do anticipate updating our primacy packages to include these additional contaminants over the next few years. Maybe that isn't something you folks necessarily have to worry about, but it'll be quite a bit of an undertaking for us to not only assess, but go through and work with EPA in developing those packages. So just wanted to throw that out there to let everyone know that that's also part of the process. And then finally, at least on this topic, I just wanted to mention from EPA, the economic analysis that's included in the regulation. And according to EPA, the annual cost is about $772 million. That includes assessment, monitoring, and treatment. According to the financial assessment that was conducted, and then the benefit per year is about 1.2 billion according to the financial assessment that was conducted. So basically that's the announcement. It's probably a little bit quicker maybe than even EPA's announcement this morning. In fact, some of you folks may have me in one ear and EPA in the other, and that's perfectly okay. But we just wanted to go through again those facts as they stand right now anyway, really quick, and then open it up for quick conversation, detailed conversation. If that's what we get into, that's perfectly okay, and why we're here before we roll into the agenda for the remainder of the meeting. So I'll take a quick breath and see if anyone has any questions or wishes to engage in conversation.
Hey,
So
Kerry,
74 folks are saying that I explained that well enough that there's no more additional conversation to be had. Huh?
Either that or we're all currently reading the news release that just popped up on EPA's website.
That very well could be too. So yeah, definitely want to say hot off the presses. There's no doubt about this.
I can't remember, Kerry, if you mentioned this or not, but it is based on a running annual average. So it'd be interesting to see how those averages are calculated. If it's going to be like a quarterly average, 4 quarters, consecutive quarters, like it is with DBPs, or, you know, I guess that'll depend on monitoring frequency. And then the other question I have is, you know, how will non-detects be factored into their annual average? Are those zeros? You know, so how do you calculate a weighted average? That all that'd be really interesting to see. But on the surface of it, I think there's some complexity here that's not lost on me, because trying to get folks, the public, our customers, to understand the difference between an MCL and a hazard index. You know, I'd be lying if I said we weren't scrambling to try to figure out how hazard indexes are calculated and trying to understand that a little better, so we could try to explain that to other folks. So I think that risk communication piece is huge, and I hope that, you know, I hope there's more to come on that from both from division as well as EPA in terms of guidance for how to handle that conversation going forward.
Absolutely. I think that's well said, Chris. Risk communication of scientific and technical concepts in a health setting is extremely difficult, right? And we have to remember, at least from the Division of Water standpoint, we're scientists and engineers for the most part, but we do understand the intricacies and the complexities of and how important risk communication is. So yeah, I think long story short there, that we absolutely commit to working with partners across the spectrum to learn how to better communicate this risk, but, you know, just help to get the message out in general as well.
Kerry, this is Donna. Just a quick question.
Sure.
On review of the regulation and of the information and maybe response, do you think a good next step might be for maybe some of the committees to take a look at it? I'm thinking of, you formed a PFAS group. or
There-
was going to.
We
And
did.
then maybe the
There is
drinking water
one.
compliance.
Yep. Yep, absolutely, Donna. We do have a PFAS group. In fact, right now that group is being chaired by Melanie Arnold and Alicia Jacobs from the division, and I believe they're both on the call. But 100%, I would invite everyone to get in touch with those two co-chairs because hopefully what we anticipate is, even though the division folks seated that group, so to speak, for the co-chairs, we hope to have enough interest that folks not only join the group, but are also willing to help lead the conversation.
Hey, Carrie, this is Ariana Legeman with Rural Water.
Hi, Ariana.
Yes, that group has already initially met. We did have to cancel the last meeting because, of course, this rule hadn't popped out yet, but we do have another meeting coming up on March 28th
Great,
at noon to discuss what just got published.
great, good deal. And I actually have a note from Melanie that, that she was probably going to probably maybe mention, some of the work that the group is doing and everything, but I completely stole her thunder. So I probably owe Melanie an apology for doing that, for the announcement that I made.
Oh, it's Melanie. No problem, Carrie. And, Ariana is actually our co-chair. We were able to set that up during the last meeting. So,
Spectacular.
yeah.
Any other thoughts, questions? I mean, there's 75 folks on, so we've got a really good, I think, cross section of representatives. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. So before I move on to so I've developed a PowerPoint more or less for the conversation this morning. I know we do have an agenda that I assure you will go through, but there's some other things that I just wanted to share with the group this morning as well, that we hope to, again, with more or less with each topic, have a conversation and listen for that input. I mean, the reason that this work group was formed years ago, I think, had probably a more formal process or a more formal intent than what we've got right now. But the way the division envisions and I think uses this work group is a great way to quarterly hear from our stakeholders, or at least share our messaging, some of our messaging with stakeholders, and then hear that feedback so that we can refine accordingly. I mean, I can't say how important that is. So I'm going to give it just another quick breath before I move on to some additional slides that I had put together that I hope to share with everyone. All right, I'm moving on. So last year we shared the priorities for 2022, and 3 months into 2023, John Webb and I thought that it was appropriate that we share out our priorities for the year. And these are, I'm not going to read them to everyone, but I'll allow them to stay up long enough for folks to take a look, screenshot, whatever you guys need. And again, we're sharing out the slides as well. So this, none of these are a secret, right? But just wanted to update those priorities from 2022. You guys, if you remember our 2022 priorities, this is a little bit different, but we wanted to, again, not only identify what those are, but share them out, but also let folks know that, rest assured, if you don't see what your priority is on this slide, but it's water related and the division works with it, rest assured, it remains a priority and we're still going to get the job done. These are just those high level priorities. So again, just wanted to focus on, again, we had 5 years of infrastructure investments that's actually moving at a pretty quick pace. So we're continuing working with our partners at Kentucky Infrastructure Authority on implementation and getting those dollars on the ground. There's it seems like there are new programs and new opportunities that are announced every few weeks that are associated with the bipartisan infrastructure law and some preceding legislative enactment. things like the emerging contaminants for small underserved communities grant. But again, those are the things that we're keeping our finger on the pulse of, and basically jumping at every opportunity that we can identify. We've already gone through PFAS. We, of course, are making, I think, great strides in our nutrient reduction strategy. You folks will remember some of the marketing that we did with the ag water quality plans over the past year or so. And it's pretty amazing to see how well marketing really works. So I just want to share that anecdote because I think it's hugely important, because a lot of the things that we do, and this can tie in, Chris, with the risk communication that we just spoke about, is, again, there are reasons that marketing exists, and that's it's because it does work, and we actually have real proof of that in those ag water quality plans. Division Water's regulatory agency, our permitting priorities are certainly not going anyway. In fact, we have a great leader in that department. Jason Hurt is probably one of the most intelligent, innovative permit writers that I've ever had the privilege of knowing. So, when it comes to those types of things, I encourage folks to get in touch and to develop a relationship with Jason and his staff, because with the resources that they have, it's pretty amazing what they're able to accomplish. I can't overstate how much time recovering from disasters takes, especially the major flood that we had last July as a follow-up to the tornado that from the previous December. Water and water infrastructure has wide-ranging significant impacts on basically everybody. And anytime we have a natural disaster in some way, shape, or manner, the division and our staff, and I really have to throw kudos out to the emergency response team and the field office folks, because those are the ones that the folks that are really picking up the lion's share of the work when those things happen. So if you see a first responder or a field office employee, slap them on the back or give them a handshake and thank them for what they do, because it's hugely important. When it comes to natural hazards, the division works with emergency management, and we are a partner in developing the state hazard mitigation plan. So we're going to be working on new flood, dam, and drought risk assessments. But I don't think that overshines the work that we just did over the past weekend. We had an ongoing dam failure last Friday. Luckily, we were able to work with ERT and the dam owner and basically kept the dam from failing. But this is something that we're starting to see about once every 6 months, some type of incident developing on a dam, and it's fairly considerable resource wise. The final two priorities are, we with a more finite number of resources, and that's personnel. You guys know how hard it is to hire and keep folks right now. So we're having to be really strategic on how we get innovative and streamline our processes so that we can become more efficient. We're probably not going to get a huge number of personnel that is appropriated by the legislature. It's simply not going to happen for a regulatory agency, but we can get better at what we do. And I assure you, we've got some very dedicated folks that are very good at what they do. But we're working on efficiency. And then, the final thing is probably the most important thing. And that's, what we're doing today is hopefully getting out ahead of messaging, sharing messaging, and listening to what we hear on the way back through, because that inevitably helps what our messaging is. So I got some more slides, but I just want to take a quick breath. I'm going to grab a drink to see if anyone has any input on, again, high level priorities. Don't worry if what your priority is isn't here. I assure you, we're not going anywhere when it comes to water resources, the Safe Drinking Water Act, or the Clean Water Act. And I'll also have a quick overview of some bills next. So that's just a quick prelude of what's to come. So any questions? You guys are such a talky group today. All right, so I'm gonna go on quickly to some bills, and again, don't worry about all the text on here. This is more for my edification than anyone else, and thanks, Carol Catalfo, for putting this together for me. But the division in the cabinet has had several bills that we've been working with through this short session. And we anticipate, continuing to do so. First is House Bill 160, which basically is a follow-up to House Bill 386 from the 2021 session, dealt with mixing zones and bioaccumulative chemicals of concern. We actually support this bill. We think that it some of the limitations that were imposed by House Bill 386, we believe are alleviated by, or would be alleviated by, the passage of this bill. And again, it's been assigned to the Natural Resource Environment Committee as of yesterday. The Regulatory Sandbox Program Bill, House Bill 264, we've also kept a close eye on. Passed the House previously, passed the Senate, so it did have some amendments, so it was headed back to the House Rules Committee as of last evening. So it's another one that we continue to keep an eye on. Nuclear energy, this one was assigned to the State House government last Friday, so we'll continue to see how that develops. Right now, we've been coordinating with the Office of Energy Policy, which is pertinent to, or I guess part of the Energy and Environment Cabinet. It's Kenny Stump and her folks that have a large stake in this bill. Senate Bill 226 is a bill of great concern for the division and the cabinet as a whole. It flew through the Senate, flew through the House yesterday, but it has significant impacts on not only on the division's Clean Water Act permitting authority, but also the issuance of 401 water quality certifications. It was sponsored by Senator Turner in Harlan County. We sent the committee that proffered this bill some information, a letter of what we thought the impacts and what we anticipate the impacts will be if and when this bill does become law, and we do think that they are significant and long-ranging. Senate Bill 263 is a bill that we actually helped draft that hopefully promotes additional regionalization within water and wastewater utilities. One of the key components of that is asset management planning, which some of the utilities on here are very involved, engaged, and aware of. So we're waiting a committee assignment there, hoping that it continues to move. And then the last bill is in another bill that the division has proffered, and it's the dam safety bill. It's a water resources bill that basically the gist of it is the requiring, it would require emergency action plans for significant and high hazard dams. It's in the House NREC committee right now. Where it goes from here, we hope it continues along. It's been proposed for several years. It always seems to fizzle out. You guys may remember what happened to it last year. I won't go through that one again. But we see just what happened last Friday, why this is necessary. So I think we will continue to keep pushing these requirements for dam owners, because especially dam related infrastructure, it's just like you, me, and everyone else, that it starts to fall apart as it ages. And every time I get out of the bed, I am reminded of that. Unfortunately, dams don't have a good way to remind us of that other than to pop holes in their spillways and the like. And we're seeing a lot of that, I think, much more so than we have in the past. So again, I'm going to take a quick breath to see if anyone has any questions or thought. And I have a hard time keeping up with the chat. So if folks are putting questions or anything in the chat, if someone could help me out with that, it would be great. So any thoughts, any input on the bills that we've been tracking?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I was just going to read the chat question here. Thanks, David Billings, for the question. Any monies available to facilitate or enhance Senate Bill 263, which is the regionalization bill?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, David. In fact, We think so. In fact, Senate Bill 263 is I would almost call, we work with PSC, we work with, or at least we spoke with Kentucky Rural Water Association on this. And it's a bit of an update to the bill that Rural Water passed last year that basically set up an account for capital and non-capital expenditures under KIA. So we think that those dollars in that account will be available to help promote the regionalization aspects of this bill. Good question.
And then we also have a question from Chloe Brantley. She says she's interested in how small disadvantaged community funding assistance is tracked and reported as a priority. Would this be in a KIA or Division of Water report?
Long and the short of it, Chloe, is yes. We always have to track any kind of funding wars that go like that. How it gets tracked is going to be, it depends on which agency actually implements that. So we anticipate, so let's set aside state revolving fund, right? Because the division and KIA are partners in state revolving fund. The division is responsible for technical and managerial aspects of SRF, and then KIA is responsible for financial. They're the bank. How we anticipate implementing the new emerging contaminants for small disadvantaged communities, that was just announced last week, actually may have been 2 weeks ago, and we still have very little guidance, but we anticipate implementing that through the PWSS program, the Public Water Supervision, and I'm missing an S, I'm sorry, but it's a program that is implemented through the Energy Environment Cabinet through the Division of Water. So that's how we anticipate doing that one. As additional things come along, we basically are working with KIA to determine what is the best mannerism to get these things implemented. The train of thought largely being, if it's a revolving type program, like a revolving fund or the additional pots of funding that came available through SRF. I mean, that's a slam dunk. KIA has that infrastructure. The WRIS is built. That's really easy to do. One of the things that KIS doesn't necessarily always do are grants. They're very familiar with that, but the EEC is very familiar with grants. So that's kind of where we're, I wouldn't say officially, but unofficially making that line of demarcation. So revolving loan funds going through KIA, and then grants where the PWSS program can be leveraged coming through the division. So hopefully that answered.
And that's it for the current chat.
All right. Good to see you in the office, Mr. Webb.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry I'm late. I feel bad for whoever on New Circle was in the accident that held me up.
Hopefully everyone's safe. So I'm just going to go through a few additional slides and then we'll go back to the agenda. So again, I mentioned water infrastructure. This is largely Jory Becker's branch, but really involves a lot of different pieces of the division in the implementation piece, right? So 5 years of funding. We're basically in the second year of funding right now, looking at going into the third. Implementation is more of a 15 to a 20 year time frame, or at least that's what we're projecting. We actually are working on project ranking for SRF right now. So thanks to all you folks that before the December timeline submitted those projects through the WRIS. I anticipate soon we'll be opening up those profiles again to incorporate some comments and other things very soon. And then you wanted to also mention that the division is participating in some other opportunities that have come about either through bill or some other legislation, right? We're working really closely with USDA Rural Development and EPA on a program called Closing the Wastewater Gap, and that's in Harlan County, and it's the Tri-City. So it's Cumberland, Benham, and Lynch in Harlan County. We're trying to develop a regional assessment in order to hopefully invest in that area, which is been around. If you guys have any dealings with the division or the cabinet over the years, you know the Tri-Cities. I mentioned the grant program for emerging contaminants. So with the announcement today, I think that that's an opportunity that is coming about. It's an incredibly new opportunity. So we don't have a lot of answers on what that looks like just yet. And we just had our first conversation with EPA about that grant program last week, basically, which we were told, yes, it's a grant program, and more or less it appears EPA has taken the binders off. You know, they want us to be able to use these grant funds on a wide range of things that will benefit emerging contaminants, not only locally, but I think at a state level, as long as those investments benefit small disadvantaged communities. So we're really looking hard at that. And then, you know, I can't mention enough the amount of funding available, especially for lead service lines. So thanks to those folks that submitted project profiles for lead service line fundings, but you know, emerging contaminants. And with the announcement today of the PFAS regulations, you know, I would anticipate, I don't know with any kind of certainty, this is me guessing basically, but I would anticipate the announcement of several additional opportunities that may come about from EPA and others. Jory, I saw you come on camera. I want to say hey to you, but is there anything you want to say to the group while you're on camera?
Well, I just came on to see if there was anything that anybody had to say. I'll just mention that, one thing about that I kind of spoke briefly with you this morning. We had a meeting yesterday, and you know, we've got to develop or help work with you all. And if anybody has any ideas, we would certainly welcome them. But in scoping those LSL inventory projects, a couple weeks ago at the board meeting, the first LSL project was presented, and questions came up from board members about the cost of those projects and what the proportions were for, say, consulting versus the actual collection and management of data. So I just wanted to say that that's something for sure in the projects that are being currently worked to rank. That's something you might expect some additional reaching out from us as about trying to get some more clarification on those projects. But we are actively working on that. We did submit our initial comments out to the ad so that they could work on that. I guess that's been 2 weeks. So the window's closing on getting that back so we can actually start the formal ranking process. So that's all I really had to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Jory. Knew you'd always be good for those details that I am not necessarily good at. So appreciate that. All right, moving on to nutrients quickly. You know, our nutrient reduction strategy is basically moved from to where we have a plan to implementing the plan. So yeah, the implementation of the division's nutrient reduction strategy is in full effect, I would say. You know, I mentioned marketing and how well it works as far as ag water quality plan enactment goes. We are heavily working with actually the Office of Energy Policy to identify potential avenues for wastewater optimization. So there'll be more to come on that. But again, that's a partnership that is being developed between the Division of Water and Kenya Stump and her folks with Office of Energy Policy and looking at optimization to help address nutrient reductions through optimization studies and BMP implementations. And then, you know, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the expiring MS4 GP. So that's something that Jason and his staff are working on. They do have a draft permit that is being proffered in-house. So that's kind of going through some internal comments that they'll be briefing us up on very soon, us being the director's office soon. I don't know that we'll necessarily have the GP completed by the time the current GP expires, but of course that'd be administratively extended until we get through that process. one of the things that we're heavily involved with, and actually received some specialized bill funding from, is Gulf Hypoxia Task Force work. So those folks that may know Josiah Fry is working heavily on Gulf Hypoxia Task Force in the implementation measures of our nutrient reduction strategy. And then nutrients, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about nature-based solutions a little bit, just because of the inherent nature of water quality and water quantity that can be addressed with those types of solutions. And we hope that not only under a nutrient standpoint, but also, again, water quantity, that we'll basically be able to make those nature-based solutions projects allowable for FEMA funding. So FEMA mitigation funding is, another pot of funding that historically hasn't been used in that realm of nature-based solutions, but we think it's a great opportunity that we're trying to bring in for folks.
Hey, Carrie, before you move on, I just
Sure.
wanted to jump in real quick on the nutrients. And just make a pitch. We have a nutrients committee. We may get an update from later today, but anybody that's interested in the nutrients conversation, I would encourage you to join that committee. They're meeting pretty regularly these days.
Good deal. I talked a little bit already about the renewal. Again, we about 100 communities under 44 permits. That permit does expire at the end of April of this year. And again, we will be engaging stakeholders in this group and elsewhere once we have that draft permit put together and vetted through our internal processes, of course. So, reach out to Luke Hanks if you have any questions about that. I'll also be speaking at the Kentucky Stormwater Association conference here in the next month or two. I don't know exactly when that is, but we'll be out there as well, and I'm sure that'll be a hot topic during that conference as well. Again, wanted to quickly mention how heavily we've been engaged in recovering from the flood, not only in a floodplain management, but standpoint, but water, wastewater infrastructure, energy, and everything that goes along with the recovery of the flood. You can see it's a fairly, all things considered, it's a fairly small area that was impacted, but the devastation is absolutely astounding. We did a very high level assessment of just the water and wastewater infrastructure anticipated damage, and it was over $1 billion from this event alone. So, I mentioned the EK Safe Fund because we do have, those funds set up by the legislatures to help in the recovery. Interestingly enough, that fund was set up and it disallowed any of those funds being spent in the 100-year floodplain. And that kind of always baffled me because if you look at Eastern Kentucky, it's hard not to be in a 100-year floodplain. But I think there was an additional bill that was sponsored this session that took that limitation away from those funds. So the key takeaway there is we're still looking at years of recovery. It'll never be the same in parts of Eastern Kentucky. I think of Isom in Letcher County. Isom will never be the same. So, just again, keep that in mind. Keep those first responders, give them a high five or a slap on the back whenever you get a chance, because not only the people that are impacted, but those first responders who put themselves in harm's way to help people. Wanted to talk real briefly about WOTUS. Guys are probably aware that the cabinet didn't join in the Kentucky Attorney General's suit against EPA on WOTUS. The general takeaway from our standpoint is basically the rule takes what has been in guidance for a very, very long time and puts it into regulation. So as far as the impacts were concerned to the division, the WOTUS rule isn't hugely impactful to us on an everyday business as a whole basis. So there are some upcoming webinars that we wanted to share. And again, we'll share these slides out so folks can have these updates on WOTUS. But especially the relatively permanent significant nexus and then the exclusions. But again, we anticipate moving forward programmatically like we have for the past several years. And largely what that boils down to is jurisdictional determinations by the applicable U.S. Army Corps of Engineers District Office and the Division of Water 401 Water Quality Certification Program, working closely with those folks in the 401 and the 404 well. So I just want to, yeah, you guys are in this meeting. So I always like to just throw up, thank you all again for being here. Appreciate the audience and everyone not only listening, but hopefully challenging us a little bit. Those are the slides that I wanted to share this morning before we kind of roll into the remainder of the agenda. But I'd be happy to take again a quick break to see if anyone has any questions or wants to talk about anything that I just mentioned. You are a talkative group this morning. Yeah.
It's Melania. I was just
I know.
wondering, we talked about mentioning the drinking water PFAS sampling, and I didn't know if you wanted to bring that up.
Yes, that's a good point, Melanie. So Melanie brings up a wonderful point, actually. So as it stands right now, the division is actively sampling drinking water systems across the state, the finished water, basically closing the gap from the study that we conducted in 2019 of some strategic drinking water systems. So we're going to have data for finished drinking water from every producer in the state over the next couple of months. And as we receive those data, we're going to make them available not only to the water system, but once we make the data available, they're available to everyone through open records requests. But that's our plan. We're not going to kind of hold on to the data to develop a report at the end of our efforts. We're going to go ahead and as we receive those sample results, we're going to go ahead and share them with the systems. So did I hit on everything there, Melanie?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we took into account the UCMR5 sampling too, so if it's not duplicate efforts too much, but to get some results sooner than later. And we're just gonna pause and look at what comes out all with the MCL information, just in terms of how we communicate those results out to as well. So we'll be sharing those out in the near future.
Right. Very good. So again, if anyone has any questions about, how we do that, the results, of course, we're going to coordinate very closely before we do any type of sampling or anything. But so if you've been contacted, if there's been any sampling, hopefully you have been contacted. I'm sure you have been, but if you get called, I just would anticipate everyone, expect getting that call maybe sooner rather than later if you haven't already. The only other thing on the list I wanted to briefly mention was the East Palestine incident and subsequent plume through the Ohio River. Just wanted to share there that we've been coordinating extremely closely with Orsenco, the Ohio River Sanitation Commission, on that, not only response to that event, but the communication aspect. In fact, I believe it was just yesterday that Richard Harrison, the executive director of Orsenco, testified before a Senate committee on the response. So just wanted to share that again, we tracked very closely, not only the plume, but also communicated through Orsenco and through our work groups very, very closely with those systems that were on the river. So that, not only know where the plume is, so you can make decisions about opening or closing intakes, but also treatment options and things. So I want to commend each and every one of those systems that are on the Ohio River, that as this incident kind of not only happened, but continued to evolve over time, because there were some derivative products that were noticed after the original plume kind of developed and began moving downriver. So again, just want to throw out the kudos to all those systems. I talked to several of you. Everyone was on top of things. And I think the communication throughout that, at least in Kentucky, and that's all I can speak about, the communication that we had was very forthcoming and very transparent. So I want to thank everyone for that. Any questions, thoughts before we move on? I don't know if Tony has been able to join us on the call yet. I don't see him. Oh. And he actually called me during the meeting, so that tells me that he's probably not going to be able to make it, unfortunately. But unless there are any questions, I'd be happy to go off camera and turn it over to Elizabeth Dowling, who's going to give us an update on lead in drinking water.
Hello.
Hi,
I
Elizabeth.
have a presentation. Good morning, everybody.
You have the
Yeah.
floor.
All right, thank you. Let me share my screen and someone can please tell me if they can see it okay. I always forget this is a two-stage process in Zoom. Okay?
Yep, we can see it just fine, Elizabeth.
All right, great. So let's see. I'm just going to give an update on the progress so far on implementing the lead and copper rule revisions. Everybody in here, I think, knows that this is a regulation that came out in December of 2021, a revision to the, a kind of a major overhaul to the lead and copper rule. So I'll talk about the things that we've done so far to get working on that. We've been working really carefully with the lead and drinking water work group from this committee, and that's been really helpful to develop some guidance documents, to reach out to all kinds of people around the state and come up with different, different tools to help water systems. Here's the subgroups that have met so far. Mostly the service line inventory and replacement group, funding and financing and small systems have done a lot of work. And then the remaining groups on here are just getting started and developing their communication tools and everything else that they need. So far, the Division of Water has done quite a few different outreach efforts since December of 2021. We've participated in 16 different trainings and other events. We estimate at least 600 drinking water operators have been reached in this way. Those include workshops, CEU trainings, other kinds of meetings, and I'll get into those a little bit in a minute here. We have this weekly email called Drinking Water Wednesday. We send out almost every week, and so far in the past 15 months or so, we've had 8 of those emails with material specific to this rule, and those are mostly focused on the inventory process. In all these trainings that we've done, we've been focusing mainly on the service line inventories, but more recently, we've started working on other areas of the rule too, like some of the tap sampling and school sampling requirements, just mainly to give water systems a heads up that these are other requirements you need to start planning for and budgeting for. So we've also developed this pre-review survey, and that is a survey that water systems can fill out. They send it to us, and then we provide them detailed written comments back with suggestions on what they've done so far and what they could continue to do. Those comments are 2 to 4 pages long of specific information that they can use to develop their service line inventories. We've been to 9 area development district water management council meetings, and we've reached out to all of them. So if there are any other representatives in here, we'd be happy to still come out to your quarterly meetings and meet with you. But so far, I think we've been to 8, and we have 1 more scheduled for later this month. And then we've established a new section on our webpage, and we've been updating that with new information as it becomes available. So I'll go through a little bit about what each of the subgroups of the lead and copper, or the lead and drinking water work group, has done. The service line inventory and replacement subgroup, as I mentioned, has been the most active so far, because this inventory is the main requirement that we need to take action on right now. We've developed a template in Excel format and guidance documents for the service line inventory. The Excel template has been taken by Rural Water and others, and they're working on ArcGIS solutions, and they've used that as kind of a basis for their ArcGIS solution for quite a few water systems around the state. We've provided individualized support to water systems. We have set workshops. This subgroup created a workshop, kind of a 4 systems, by systems, 4 systems, for to give their own feedback or own information about what they've been working on with the inventory and share that with other systems. And those have been really well received. In fact, I think almost all of them filled up within 1 day of the registration opening. So we just finished the last one of those on March 1st. Here's an example of the template that we've created. It has the main requirements for the inventory, and it also has information about developing the TAP sampling plan. So this provides guidance for what systems need to be thinking about as they develop their TAP sampling plan, which is also due to us in October of 2024, the same time as the survey or the inventory. We met with these are the area development districts that we've met with so far, the water management councils that we've reached out to. And these meetings have been really great because we have leadership people and other people like mayors and judge executives that may have heard of this rule but don't know the ins and outs of it. And drinking water operators too have all been present at some of these meetings. And so it's been really good to get to reach out to those people, have some face-to-face contact and hear their comments. It's a setting that they're all really comfortable in, very comfortable in reaching out or yelling out comments to us like, what are we going to do? How are we supposed to do this? And we've gotten a lot of good conversation in those meetings as far as, what are the requirements for this rule and how on earth are they going to meet it? Because there are quite a few requirements and concerns about how to meet this rule. Okay, so the small system subgroup has sent a letter to all the very small systems, those serving under 3,300 people. That letter was also sent out on Drinking Water Wednesday, just an introduction to the rule requirements and where they can find more information. We've also started working on several other documents that we hope will be helpful, different templates and things that small systems can use to start collecting information for their inventory. And if anybody has questions, please feel free to interrupt anytime. Okay, the funding and financing subgroup, they were really active early on in the process. They created a letter of recommendations that they met with KIA and Division of Water as far as how to manage the SRF allocations for lead and how to treat the MHI and think about disadvantaged communities. And then they developed this funding fact sheet with the Division of Water, which is now on our webpage. So we've added that on and also sent that out in Drinking Water Wednesday. And we found all kinds of different funding resources related or that could be used for lead service line replacements in addition to the SRF funds. One thing that we are still looking for a little bit more information on is water systems are going to be working with private customers to replace their private section. They're not required to replace those private sections, but they do need to help identify more funds. It would be helpful to have more information on funds for that. So if anyone in this meeting has any direction to point us in as far as funding that private customers can use to replace their service lines, that would be really helpful. The public education and communications subgroup is just getting started. There's tons of communications requirements related to this rule. So they're working on a whole packet of guidance information. They've got this whole flow chart that they've created of who needs to communicate when. And so they're working on that, and we'll divide it up based on the type of system, the size, and all the different requirements for this rule. They're also looking at developing some other multimedia ideas for communicating. Gary mentioned earlier the idea of marketing and how that's becoming so important or useful And I think it's the same with this rule. This is something that lots of water systems have communicated to us so far is, can you help us communicate the requirements of this to all our customers? Because there's a lot of customer communication requirements for this rule. So here's an example of our web page. We have on the compliance section of the drinking water web page all these different tabs for each rule. And so we've created one for this lead and copper rule revisions and put all these different guidance documents on it so far, and the templates that we've created as well. Something not shown in here is there are a couple of customer communication templates on there. We're working on one right now that I hope to get finished by the end of the day today about the acceptable methods for verification of service line materials. So we'll put that up on the website once we get it finished. And just general information. Some of these are more oriented towards very small systems and others that can be more useful for everybody. The lead in schools through the WIN grant project is moving forward. I don't know if this is the most up-to-date information, but so far we're working on reaching out to schools and getting them to sign up to volunteer for lead testing, focusing on these disadvantaged and low-income communities and older school buildings. And we're trying to reach out to water systems and say, hey, communicate with your schools and ask them if they want to participate in this program, because that will help. That could help you start, working with schools, since that is a requirement for the rule too. So anyone who has any information or can direct a school that might be interested can reach out to Gabe Tanner, email, or his email and phone number down here. And these slides will be shared with everyone too. I know I'm going through it pretty quickly. So we still have ongoing efforts. We are still working with all our partners, and they are developing this ArcGIS solution that I mentioned earlier. They've already been working with quite a few water systems around the state on ArcGIS solutions to collect information for the service line inventory. We have reached out and had some communications with Division of Plumbing and are hoping to increase that relationship, because it'll be really helpful to have plumbing inspectors or even other plumbers help collect data for this, the location of lead service lines or other service line materials. And we've been collaborating with AIA, of course, on the SRF and WRIS. We are still in the process of working on how we'll use the BIL set-asides as far as coming up with a data management solution. This rule has lots of different requirements for compliance that we need to collect data for, and those aren't available in the data management that we have right now in all the different processes that we have. So we're hoping to expand on what we have now and improve on that and develop a good holistic solution. And also considering hiring some new staff using these set-asides to help with all the compliance of this rule. And that's everything that I have. So I'll take any questions or comments that people might have. And I can stop sharing, I think.
Well, thanks, Elizabeth. I guess that'll take us to committee reports.
All right, thanks everybody.
Yep, appreciate it. And rest assured, if anyone has any questions that you'd like to follow up after the meeting with us on, please feel free. Maybe this isn't always the best forum for some questions, and we completely understand that. So yeah, if you want to follow up with any of us about any of the presentation materials or anything we may have mentioned, please feel free to do that. So without any further ado, I'll move on to committee reports. I think we have reports from 4 or 5 committees. Looks like we have a report out from the infrastructure committee. Is anyone on from that committee to give us a quick report out?
This is Russ. Yeah, I'm on.
Go ahead,
Can
Russ.
everybody hear me?
Yep, you're coming through just fine.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm we have an insurance adjuster here too, so I'm not going to turn my camera on. I'm on my phone. But the infrastructure committee completed a review of the drinking water capacity development strategy and submitted that. That document was submitted to EPA last year. That document has been approved by EPA. So we will be using that new capacity development strategy moving forward. And just to inform and remind everyone, the capacity development program was created as part of the 1996 amendments to the Safe Drinking Water Act. Basically, it's to improve the technical, managerial, and financial capacity of public water systems to deliver safe and reliable drinking water to the public. The assessment is done concurrently with the Drinking Water Sanitary Survey. The Field Operations Branch conducts the technical portion, and the capacity development staff in the Water Infrastructure Branch conducts the managerial and financial portion of the assessments. So that's the way we're going to be moving forward. If you need a copy or would like to see a copy of the new approved strategy, it is on the Division of Water's website. You can email or call me. If you can't find it on the website, I can provide that to you. We are also getting ready to start ranking for the 2024 SRF funding cycle. Just last Friday, we completed the deadline for getting feedback back from the Water Management Council area development districts for updating those project profiles. As Jory alluded to earlier in the meeting, we will likely open back up a period of time for the Water Management Council coordinators and the water systems to add additional comments for those lead service line inventory projects. But we'll likely need some more additional information for that. That being said, those are the main two parts. I think moving forward with the committee, we have discussed taking up taking up asset management and what that looks like for the future. I believe we spoke to the director's office about that some months ago. I think in light of SB 263, we'd like to get some direction from the director's office and the division on just where they see that falling in with the committee and what we're going to do, and potentially even provide recommendations to KIA and to the other agencies as to asset management as it relates to that bill. And that concludes my report.
Hey, Russ, this is Carrie. I have a quick question. Are there, I know that there were some new cybersecurity measures that have been recently mentioned, and I know that's more of a sanitary survey component, but I was wondering if you had any update, or if anyone had any update on those cybersecurity pieces.
Yeah, so the EPA just came out with some additional guidance in the last few days as to recommendations to include cybersecurity as an additional assessment area on the sanitary survey. We currently look at just system security, so like any kind of surveillance, fencing around tanks, things like that, but we do not currently look at cybersecurity. So that will, we need to kind of digest what those documents say and the recommendations from EPA as to what they want us to look at. But I assume that very soon we'll probably incorporate into the new sanitary survey assessments, especially as we roll out the survey assessments with Survey 123.
Well said. Thanks, Russ. Appreciate that. Pete, you have your hand up. Oh, Pete, we can't hear you very well.
I'll chat it in.
Okay, good deal. I think we have some momentum in the chat, Pete. All right, while Pete puts that chat in, why don't we move on to the next report out? And Pete, we can come back to that, I think. Nutrients, I think Josiah is on, maybe others from there he is, maybe others. So Josiah, take that, and Pete, yeah, just want to make sure that if you get that in the chat, we'll come back to you. The floor is yours, sir. Josiah.
All righty. Yes, the nutrient subcommittee met on February 2nd to discuss a couple things, one of which is kind of next steps on a nutrient optimization toolkit for wastewater utilities that we're planning on funding with our Gulf Hypoxia program funds. We discussed collaborative opportunities with the Office of Energy Policy regarding their energy efficiency program. I also provided an update to the group on the Hypoxia Task Force developments and meetings from December when we went to DC, and progress in tracking infrastructure implementation. We are developing a list of questions for optimized facilities to help guide that optimization toolkit, which were developed subsequent to the meeting and circulated among members. If anybody's interested in the meeting, we'd love to have you. I'll put my email in the chat, and you can email me, and we'll get you involved. That's our report out.
Good deal. Thanks, Josiah. I appreciate that. Pete, I haven't seen anything come from you in chat yet, so I'm just going to keep moving through the committee reports. Next, we have PFAS, and I know that we've already alluded to this report out. I know it looks like Melanie and Ariana are the co-chairs of that committee now. So I'll turn it over to them briefly, even though, again, I've already stolen most of their thunder.
Well, I mean, really, the only thing we have to announce at this point is the next meeting for the subcommittee, which is going to be on the 28th of this month at noon, meeting via Teams or Zoom. If you would like to attend, just let one of us know. We can get you signed up to get on the invitation list for that, but that's about all.
Yeah, well, especially when I just kind of lead off the meeting and bust into it. Hey, here's what EPA says today, right? So I appreciate that. And before I move on to Pete's question, I should have not been so rude as to not ask if anyone had any questions for Josiah, but I'll definitely offer it up to Ariana or Melanie. And while we do that, Pete, I'll go to your question and your suggestion. The division meets with some utilities to discuss how to proceed with cybersecurity and sanitary surveys. Absolutely. I think we can 100% commit to that suggestion. In fact, I think the division would be extremely remiss if we didn't take in ideas and listen to some of the ideas that systems have. So 100% we'll commit to that. We do have a work group of folks that are, as Russell mentioned, working on the sanitary survey. So we're going to have trackable data and geospatial data that's available through the survey moving forward. So now is actually a really good time to have that conversation regardless. So 100% we will commit to that. Okay, that's going to bring us to the last report out, I believe, that we have for committees, and that's source water protection. Do we have anyone from source water protection?
Yes, good morning.
Yeah.
This is Dale Booth, Source Water Protection Committee co-chair. I only have a couple of things, so I'll keep it brief. Top of the list is Matt Glass is going to be stepping down as our co-chair of this subcommittee, and he will be replaced by Chloe Brantley, who is Kentucky Rural Water Association's new source water protection specialist. So we're looking forward. She's been involved with the committee for some time, so looking forward to her stepping into that role. The subcommittee is planning its next meeting for most likely the beginning of April. We're zeroing in on dates. We have been working with stakeholder feedback to generate more education and outreach materials for source water protection, specifically targeted towards educating the general public and also providing planning tools and funding information to utilities for protection planning. We're going to be continuing to build on those resources, and they are based on the Division of Water's Source Water Protection website, which I'll post in the chat here momentarily. Please, I would encourage the folks on this work group to take a look at it and provide any feedback that you think would be helpful to improve those resources, as well as any suggestions of things you don't see and would like to see. In the meantime, I think we're going to be having some discussions about PFAS and risk communication to utilities here in the near future, dealing with these new regulations. But other than that, that's our update.
Good deal. Thanks, Dale. Appreciate that. And Matt, if you're on here, appreciate your service. And Chloe, welcome to at least being the co-chair of the committee. And of course, Rural Water. We have a long-time relationship with Chloe, so that's good. So I want to throw it out there really quickly to see if there are any additional committee reports that I may have forgotten. Hi, Kim, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, Carrie. I just wanted to report out for the Compliance and Regulations Committee that although we did not have a formal meeting last quarter, the sampling plan guidance document that we created last year is now on the Division of Water's website. So I think that's something that we should report out on. And then frankly, the rest of the members were out providing training on lead surface lines. Been doing that for, it's the same group of people doing a lot of work, but for several months.
Good deal. Thanks, Kim. Appreciate that. And it's always so good to see all these familiar faces. Valerie, I see you popped on camera as well. Welcome.
Thank you, Carrie. I do have a quick report out for the Operators Recruitment and Development Committee. As you know, the workforce study survey was finalized and it has been presented to this group. There's also, we have presented it in 6 other organizations, Water Professionals Conference, Kentucky Rural Water, Northern Kentucky Water Training Systems, 2 EPA small system presentations, and also the Leadership Academy for AWWA and Clean Water Professionals. We have submitted a request to present this information to Secretary Goodman. And then I just also want to let everyone on this call know if you would like for the Kentucky Water Workforce Survey results to be presented for your organization, we are happy to fill that request. We are always looking for other opportunities to get this information out. It's also been published in the Drinking Water Wednesday e-blast. It will be in the AWWA Journal and then also in the Connector magazine. The next steps for the committee, we're going to plan on meeting in April. And the next steps include developing an operator rights and responsibilities, working with DCA to do that, possibly a FAQ page, a hotline, a YouTube video, and then also just adding the operator rights and responsibilities to standard training. And then a second area of focus for 2023 is going to be developing a best practice manuals for retaining operators. That's our report out.
Excellent. Thanks, Val. Appreciate that. Good report out. Any other work groups or committees that I may have missed that would like to speak up or have a report out for that matter? All right. I'm not hearing anything, or at least I'm not hearing anyone jumping up. So, looks like there's a question in the chat that deals with the status of the boil water guidance. This came from Pete. So concerns in the industry, the DOW is changing interpretation of regulation without changing the regulation. And that is regulating by policy. What I can honestly say is the Division of Water has no intention of regulating by policy. What we are doing is that we are looking at the regulation in the previous guidance that has been issued. We've had to put a bit of a pin in that for the time being because of other things, namely session that have cropped up. over the past month or so. But I would anticipate moving forward with that discussion, especially with regulated entities, moving forward, starting probably in the early to mid-April timeframe. At least that's what Alicia and I spoke about. And we realized that we owe everyone a conversation, and we want to have a conversation to hear those concerns, because like I said, there's no intention for the division to regulate by policy. All right, so that being said, appreciate the comment there from Elizabeth and working with RCAP, of course. Yeah, Kim, we appreciate you not only in LCRR, but also in closing the wastewater gap, you in rural water and everything that's going on out there. The Tri-Cities have needed help for a long time. So I'm hoping with everything that I have that something good comes out of what's going on down there. So I appreciate that. So I think that takes us to announcements. I don't necessarily have any announcements, but I would be happy to open up the floor, or the virtual floor, so to speak, to see if anyone does have any announcements or questions maybe that we didn't hit on during the discussion today. Would be happy to take those now. This is everyone's opportunity to stump the bald guy in the sweater vest. I've been heard to it I've affectionately been referenced as the Johnson tuxedo. So I appreciate that. All right, well, I'm not gonna, waste everyone's time. If the conversation has concluded, and so be it, that's good. Want to again just throw out thank you everyone for taking the time to spend an hour and a half with us almost today. I think at our highest we had nearly 80 folks on the call, either listening 1 ear, 2 ears, half an ear, whatever it takes. We'll take it, and we appreciate that. I do want to mention that our next meeting is going to be in June, and the date of that meeting is actually June 13th. June 13th, 2023, and we plan on doing that meeting in a hybrid setting. So we already have the training rooms at 300 Sauer building. So that's training room A, B, and C. I believe all three of them on the first floor of the building in which the division resides, reserved. So we'll have that available, but we will also, of course, have the Zoom opportunity for those that are unable to travel or would rather join remotely. So that being said, it looks like we have one hand going up and maybe some adieus going on in the chat, but I want to make sure we hear from everyone. Ariana, you have a question?
Yeah. Can we know maybe anything that was going on with the PFAS sludge sampling? I know Tony wasn't able to make it today, but do you have a recap you could hit us with?
Unfortunately, I don't. I did not have an opportunity to catch up with Commissioner Hatton prior to the meeting on his intentions and what he was going to say. He is on the road today. I can attest to that. So I'm sure he got pulled in a different direction. But what we can do is we can assure that everyone that will follow up. If not before the next meeting, we'll see if Tony can be available at the next meeting so that we can rehash that item on the agenda. And I apologize, it just happens sometimes when you're the commissioner, you get caught off in short manner sometimes. All right, so yes, Tuesday, June 13th, 10 a.m. training rooms downstairs at the 300 Sauer building. Will also have the Zoom opportunity as well for everyone. So I'll throw it up one last time for everyone before we bid adieu. Any final words or salutations? Okay. Your silence speaks magnitude. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate you joining us. Hopefully everyone, got something out of the meeting. We appreciate the conversation, the partnership, and look forward to hearing from everyone. If not next meeting, certainly before then. Stay safe and take care, everyone.